Okay, everybody, welcome to this afternoon slash evening's panel with the Anthropology of Motherhood project. The Anthropology of Motherhood is an ongoing curation of artwork and design that engages in the complex visual, material, emotional, corporeal, and lived experiences of motherhood, caregiving, parenting, nurturing, and maternal labor. So we're very excited for this evening's event. And I'm really excited to hear more from our speakers. We have, here, one second, I knocked out of my view here. We have the amazing Tara Faye Coleman. We have Jessica Gaynell Moss, and we have MUFFY Mendoza speaking to us about Black motherhood, caregiving, and decolonizing education. I also want to remind everyone another time that this evening's event will be recorded. So I would invite you to hide your view in Zoom if you don't wish to be seen. And feel free to use the chat box, and I will message you if you need any further instructions about that. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our amazing artist and mother panelists for this exciting conversation.
Are we ready?
I think so.
I'm sorry, I apologize. So let's hear first from our co-curator, Amy Bowman McAloney, and then we'll get started. Just a little brief introduction about the Anthropology of Motherhood exhibition, and welcome everyone. My name is Fran Flaherty. I'm the exhibition co-curator and founder of the project. And here is Miss Amy Bowman McAloney.
Hi, Fran. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Muffy and Jessica and Tara. Welcome, everybody. It's really great to see all of you or have you be part of this Zoom event. We have representation from Carlo, students. We have another artist that's in the show, Sue Berman, as well as a whole group of community members. So we're really grateful for having everybody here. So before we hand it off to these amazing panelists, we are so excited to have and have this dialogue and conversation. Just wanted to mention a few things about the show. Sarah introduced the concept, as Fran said. This is Fran's baby. She is the founder. This is its 5th or 6th iteration. And I am so appreciative that Fran asked me to be part of the project this past year. So we, with the idea and the intent, the original exhibitions that Fran developed were at the Pittsburgh Three Rivers Arts Festival. And what was really unique and innovative about the shows is that they were an art exhibition paired with a nursing space, a space of respite for caregivers, for mothers, for children. And that is, and I feel like, some of the panelists and artists that have been on our panels have heard me say this a bunch of times, but it is a really radical thing to have to integrate into an art space, a space for care and for breastfeeding and for motherhood. And because art spaces are usually, have a certain behavior, certain set of decorum that excludes and doesn't include children even, or anybody other than able-bodied adults that can go around and see the artwork. But the thing is that it shouldn't be radical, because the artwork in the show and the artists are engaging in representations of the aesthetics and labor of caregiving, which are essential to humanity and which are acts that occur daily and that sustain us all. And never more than in this, very challenging moment with the pandemic, does it highlight that the ethos, ethics, and culture of care as being so paramount. And so we're really pleased to have this exhibition at Carlo. And the show is running through the end of January. We're looking to extend it for a week or two, so that we can allow some in-person visitation, since Carlo's campus has been remote since November with the most recent surge. But again, I just want to thank Fran, and I want to thank all the artists for this amazing project. So with that, I'll hand it over to Tara, Muffy, and Jessica to get this panel started. Thank you.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for being here today. I know that I can speak on behalf of Muffy and Tara when I say thank you so much for choosing to spend your Friday afternoon with all of us on a Zoom call. Thank you to Fran and Amy for hosting us in both the exhibition and in our dialogue today. So much gratitude to start our call off and in welcoming people for being here on Friday. So thank you to everyone.
Definitely echoing the same sentiment. I'm hoping that we can have a really great conversation, two-way conversation, whether that's in the chat or whether that's during a Q&A, and just talk about the ways in which we can decolonize the Black mothering experience and begin to define for ourselves what we want, how we want to be as mothers, what we want to see as the end product or the manifestation of our motherhood journeys, and how we want to operate in the world and, in general as Black mothers. So thank you for taking out the time. And, I'm just hoping to spark some riveting, thought-provoking conversation that gives you something to chew on a little bit later.
Muffy, that was so beautifully said.
Thank you. I be trying. All right, so first of all,
it's like we're always so slow in the beginning and then we're going to run out of time at the end. So let's just jump into it. Muffy, how do I raise my daughter? What should I do?
I told you I don't know. I don't have any daughters. I really don't believe in, it's interesting because I was reading an article yesterday about how we should stop putting so much stock into this guided parent thing that we always try to do, or this, I call it guarding, the guardianship of children. I'm a big believer in freedom. I'm a big believer in raising children with freedom and space and place to be their authentic self, and more so as a guide versus a guard. I don't like to give too much parenting advice outside of, as women, learning, especially as Black women, learning how to trust our intuition, learning how to trust our guts. I often find that anytime I make decisions, whether it's in regards to parenting or anything else, when I'm making decisions that are not in alignment with my true authentic self, when I'm not listening to my intuition, is typically when things go awry. So for me, if the question is, how do I raise my kids? I would say raise yourself. Focus on raising yourself. Focus on making sure that you are daily having those internal conversations that are allowing you to be in touch with the needs of other people, because you can't really be in touch with the needs of other people if you don't really know what self-authenticity looks like from an internal standpoint. So the closer you get to that place of finding internal peace, the easier it will be for you to guide your children and not necessarily have to put so much force and effort into guarding them.
Muffy, let me ask you a question. How many kids do you have and what are their ages?
So I have 3 sons. They are 18, 11, 12, and 11. And so my oldest son's homeschool journey was interesting because he was in school until 7th grade. We pulled him out at the end of 8th grade, and then we homeschooled him until he was in 11th grade. And then he went back halfway through his 11th grade year and finished school in school. And then with my two younger ones, we've been home. So I always like to say my oldest son was kind of like my guinea pig. I've done a lot of experimenting with him. And then my younger two, I've been homeschooling them since they were in kindergarten and first grade. So, um, it's been a journey. It's been a real journey because I've learned so much about them, but they've taught me so much about myself. What about you ladies? What are your parenting statuses right now?
Hello, ladies. I have 6 children. I'm new to homeschooling, and I'm currently homeschooling 3. It's kind of hard. Muffy, I just sent away for your Brown Mama's bundle. I'm waiting for it. So that should help me along with my journey. This is very new. And I don't know, I'm a little afraid, but you know us as Black women, we do what we got to do when we got to do it and get it done. And so that's what I'm trying to get myself, focused with my 3 that I'm trying to homeschool. A kindergarten, a 3-year, a third grader, and an 8th grader. So it's a little bit hard. So just trying to listen to you, y'all ladies.
Just for you, Sam, I would highly recommend listening to Akila Richards' Fair of the Free Child podcast. I would get that on my listening list as soon as possible. You can find her on Apple. You can find her on Google. You can find her on Facebook and YouTube. But I would get that on my playlist like ASAP. She helped me to just get rid of a lot of the fears I had around homeschooling my kids. Actually, I always, in reference to my homeschooling journey, I always like to say there was my homeschooling journey before Akila and after Akila. Because she completely reshaped my thought process. Thank you for posting that, Jessica.
Yeah.
She completely reshaped my thought process around what I thought it was that I had to do with my kids. And after listening to her, I realized she was the one who gave me the whole guide versus guard concept. A lot of the stuff that I talk about is in reflection on the material that she's presented. And she actually just wrote a book, which I'll be doing a giveaway for on Instagram next week, called, I can't remember, I know it's called Unschooling Something. I think it might be called Fear of the Free Child. But yeah, she is my homeschooling idol.
So I have a question here. So Muffy, you have 3 boys, right? And your oldest is 18. Jessica, you have how old is your baby?
14 months.
14 months. And Tara, you have,
That's beautiful.
A 10-year-old and a 5-year-old.
now your 10-year-old and your 5-year-old are in mainstream school, right? And
Yeah.
Muffy, Jessica, obviously your daughter Max is still at home, and such a wonderful time period. In my opinion, with my kids, it was my favorite time between infancy and the time they went to school. There was just so much love and so much, organic learning in that. So Muffy, I'm interested in the journey to homeschooling. Now, you had mentioned the story of your oldest, that he was in school first, and then you decided to homeschool him, and then he went back in 11th grade and finished. I'm really curious as to what prompted those back and forth, this shift from the mainstream schooling, and I'm calling them mainstream schooling just because, I don't know what else to call that, a public school or, but yeah, if you could speak to that, tell me why.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you why. There was nothing, all of it was my insecurity. The entire thing was my own insecurity. I took him out of school because I was insecure about what was happening in school. Then I put him back in school because I was insecure about what was happening at my house. And it took for me to put him back in school and him to come back and say, Mom, I wish you would never put me back in school, for me to realize that he didn't want to be in school in the first damn place. Out of all of my children, well, I can't say, probably my oldest and my middle benefit the most from homeschooling because they are creatives, because they think outside the box, because they are
Mhm.
really, really highly intelligent and they don't need anybody to guide them in school. They're the two of them, you can just give them their schoolwork and they just finish it and they're ready to move on to the next thing. But it was all about my own insecurity. Sam had mentioned the Brown Mama Mindset. A lot of people get the book and they think it's about parenting. It's not. It's about removing systemic insecurity from Black women. It's about the journey you go on, the mindset you have to develop in order to be a good parent, in order to be a good partner, in order to be a good person to yourself. Because I always tell people homeschooling is not so much about the kids as it's been about healing. Homeschooling is really about healing. And I hate even giving it the title homeschooling because I don't even feel comfortable calling it that anymore. It was the thing that rescued me from being on this assumed success path that we oftentimes enter onto when we are under the guise of white supremacy, because we're not able to define for ourselves. And taking my kids out of school forced me at every turn to really pay attention to things that were important, versus when my kids weren't in school. When my kids were in school, I had all this free time and I kind of just found ways to fill it up. Well, once they were there with me, children are mirrors. So they're like mates, but to the 10th power, because they are literally acting you out every day of their lives. So you're paying attention, and having them with you forces you to pay attention. Like, you don't have a choice. So you're looking at yourself when you're looking at your child's insecurity, when you're looking at their tears, when you're looking at their happiness and their joys. The number one thing you have to remember is you put that there. Now, when they get older, as my son got older and is out in the world, now I'm realizing all that ain't me. Some of that's just you. But a lot of it is me. So I'm looking at myself constantly in these three different like reincarnations, and they've gifted me so much in terms of just being able to learn about myself. But to answer your question, all of that was my insecurity at every stage, at every step of the way. And the more I was with them, the more I began to see how my insecurities were playing out in their lives.
So just a reminder, that's Muffy Mendoza. She's the founder of Brown Mamas, and it's a group, and also the producer of the Brown Mamas monologue, which I was looking forward to last year, which we did not have because of the pandemic. You've collected an incredible amount of resources for brown mamas in exactly the type of guidance that was lacking. You're really filling in something here that that is completely lacking in our system, in the system of education. But and you can stop me if you want to, but I'm really curious because you mentioned insecurities, that was what prompted you to take your son out of school and then back in school. And we all have insecurities about our children. Every day, every minute, am I feeding too much? Am I not? Is the milk too cold or is the milk too warm? Are they eating? Should I be giving organic food? Should they be walking at this age, or should I wait another day? I mean, from the little ones till when they're finally at school and they get a little bit of homework, and let's say, I don't know, I'm old, so I'm going to say, like, Run, Jane, Run. That book, and I don't know how many people know about Run, Jane, Run. But it's just like two very blue-eyed, blonde-haired kids literally running in a countryside is just completely foreign. And they bring home these lessons plans, and you're like, okay, we don't relate to that. Our family is not that. But then we're learning about that. I mean, that's the insecurity that I had. So if you could, what brought about this self-awareness?
So there was, I would say there was what I call legit insecurity, which is kind of like legit. I was concerned about what was happening at my kid's school. And then there were my insecurities that were just like, yo, I got some childhood trauma that, are my issues. And those are playing a part too. So the legit like insecurity was I became a room parent at my kid's school and I went to the school. And I will never forget this one instance where I was serving breakfast to all the teachers for a teacher appreciation day. And I was taking the breakfast cart up the elevator. I got off the elevator and the teacher must not have heard me, but the way this school was built, it was like had little sections. Like each classroom was in its own little section. And I was coming around the corner with the breakfast cart, and there was a teacher, a white male teacher, and he had a little black boy pinned up against the wall with his fingers in his face and just doing this to him. And at that moment, I was like, oh, hell no, my kids won't ever get here because I will kill you. Like, I will kill you if I see that happening with my son. And so that informed me. And then also there was another, the straw that broke the camel's back was this little girl. She was in my middle son's classroom, which my middle son at the time was the top of his class. Of course, he was only in first grade, but he was really, really smart, doing really good in school, everything like that. No big problems at all. And so when this little girl was really, really smart, but every time I would go to class, she would be at the back of the classroom and she would be sitting with her feet on the desk, almost kind of like, you know, when you walk, like if there's a guy watching football and he's like really, really comfortable in the class, in his space, he's got his feet on the table. Like she was just like that. She was just in class like that. But she had been put in the black of class because they said she had a learning disability. And I'll never forget this one day, I ended up being there the whole day. And every step of the way, she would call out everything that was happening in the class. She would say, it's time for us to get our manipulatives. It's time for this to happen. It's time for that to happen. Oh, don't forget so-and-so needs this, you know, so that he can do his history work. And the teacher found it extremely annoying. But I'm sitting there watching this little girl. I'm like, nothing's wrong with her. She's outgrown this environment. She's bored and nobody is offering her an alternative. And so I went to the teacher. I said, hey, did you ever think about her just maybe being gifted? Because she knows what's going on in class. Like I'm watching her. She knows. And I knew some of the kids that had behavioral problems and I compared them to her. And I was like, this is not the same thing. Like she's something different. And the teacher was just like, well, they've designated her as having a learning disability. There's nothing else we can do about it. And so I just remember going home every time I was in class and thinking about this child and thinking, my son is in first grade. He's at the top of the class. He's reading well. He's doing math well. This is going to be him one day. When he gets to that point where he gets a teacher who doesn't want to challenge him, where he gets a teacher who's not interested in hearing about that he might be bored, this might be him. So, you know, as much as I wish I would have maybe taken action to be like, oh, we're going to liberate all these kids. At that moment, all I could do was think about my kids. And I was just like, I can't, all of my kids are really, really smart. And I said, I can't have my kid be that kid. So I'm going to have to do something about it. So that was like my legitimate concern. And then also I'm an avid studier of African history. So I understand the impetus for schooling and American history. I understand the impetus for schooling. I understand why Black children are often pushed to the back of the classroom. And I also understand that those are systemic problems. They're not necessarily problems that you can fix by pointing it out to a teacher or letting a principal know this is an issue. When a problem is systemic, it means that there is a mindset in place that is overpowering the individuals within the situation. And there's also a system in place. So there's a mindset, which is a box within the mind that doesn't allow people to think outside of it. And then there's also things in place that are supporting the perpetuation of that mindset. So I knew that in order for me to, that even if I could make a difference on a massive level, the time it would take to trickle down for that to have a trickle down effect would, you know, be way longer than getting my kid out of the classroom. So, and then I had also my own childhood trauma because I was that little girl at the back of the classroom, which is why she resonated so much for me, because I was her. And I was pushed along and just pushed along and pushed along. And my giftedness was never recognized until I started picking up books and reading them on my own. And I didn't want that to be my kids. So those were definitely the things that caused me to just be like, all right, it's just time for me to make a change for my children, at least for my children right now. Did that answer?
I'm happy you brought this point up, Fran. There's like, okay, I'm putting it in the chat right now. There's this poem by Margaret Burroughs, she's the co-founder of the DuSable Museum in Chicago, a visual artist, writer, poet, educator, arts organizer. And the poem is, "What should I tell my children who are Black?" And the poem starts off talking about how there's so many negative connotations associated with Blackness. And this is what our children are taught in schools. You know, I think this line, what should I tell my children who are Black? Of what it means to be captive in this dark skin. What should I tell my dear one, fruit of my womb, of how beautiful they are, when everywhere they turn, they're forced in abhorrence of everything that is Black. Villains are Black with Black hearts. A Black cow gives no milk. Black hen lays no eggs. Black news comes bordered in Black. Black is evil, and evil's Black, and devil's food is Black. But then she goes in the second stanza and says, "And what should I tell my dear ones raised in a white world, a place where white has been made to represent all that is good and pure and fine and decent, where clouds are white and dolls, and heaven surely is a white, white place with angels robed in white, and cotton candy and ice cream and milk and ruffled Sunday dresses and dream houses and long sleek Cadillacs, and angels' food is white, and all is white." And the poem goes on, but I think it speaks so much to your point, Muffy, of how we can't control these environments that our children are in if they're in these public places like this. And that tension is something where I'm learning from you, and really empowered by your words, of creating environments that you can control for your children, and choosing to find literature and information to share with them that doesn't just perpetuate these same ideas about us and the way that we are doing things is so wrong and othered, you know? And so I encourage you all to watch that video of Burroughs, because I think it's really brilliant. And she is just, you know, another Black brilliant mama who's got quite a legacy behind her.
Thank you. That's great. So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I just have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so hello everyone. Thank you for holding space for this as well. I have a daughter. She's almost 2 years old. And I take education very serious. I'm an artist as well. So basically, to get to the question, I'm trying to find ways to teach her, you know, the basics, numbers, alphabet, all of that. But I find myself, being that I, you know, multitask when I'm home, getting caught up with the, you know, Ubongo kids or Keely and me on the computer. And I find myself specifically struggling to, you know, teach her how to, you know, learn the basics of, you know, like I said, ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, keeping her engaged, because she's very smart reading her books and being very Afrocentric with her learning skills, or with her learning habits. But I don't know, I'm just trying to find resources and ways to engage and teach my daughter just, you know, how to grow and be intelligent and use her intelligence. And I've done so much research, but I can't really find something that's not online, something that is not electronic based. And I would like to know, how did you navigate that in early ages for your children, Muffy?
So after this, I think is a good time for me and Jessica to cue the conversation we were having before, because I have 2 questions for you, Ebony. Number one, ain't you African?
Yes.
So why do you need to teach your daughter Afrocentricity? You are by very nature. This is the problem with Africans on American soil. For some reason, we think we're not African. You are a Black woman. You are an African woman. You don't need to teach your daughter how to be African. You just need to teach your daughter how to be her.
Yes.
That's it. You don't, in terms of the more history, hold on.
I worded my question very wrong. I'm not asking how to teach my daughter how to be Black or African. That's not what it is. It's more so of the resources that I find, like, for example, having a simple toy with VTech, you know, a phone, you know, and they have, you know, white faces on there. I'm talking more so of having a learning for a mother that is not quite, a teacher in the sense of like having a lesson plan, I'm saying more so of resources, that I could use a printout or something of the store without it being online, because the research that I see online, basically, long story short, I'm sorry, the question is, I'm not being very clear. The question is, I don't want to use electronics as much, because when I use the electronics for my daughter to, learn her basics, they're Afrocentric, nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to teach her how to be Black, but I'm more so saying lesson plans that can work along with, how our family is, how she represents herself, how she sees herself. Even history lessons, aside from the books that I have, I understand reading to your children that doesn't have to be within a certain grade level, because the more that you read just normal adult, literature, that's how they grasp it. I hope I'm making myself clear with that.
You're very clear.
How old
Okay.
is her?
I'm sorry?
How old is she?
She's not even 2 yet. She's 2 months away from 2. So about 24 months. So she's 22 months.
Go ahead, Muffy.
So the second question I would ask you is, what makes you think your daughter won't want to learn when she's ready? So there's like I always tell people, and I will say this isn't something that people really understand until they understand what learning really is. So that's why I always tell people, there was my homeschooling journey before Akilah, and there was my homeschooling journey after Akilah. A dog doesn't get taught to bark. Humans must learn to read. We must learn to write. We must learn how to communicate effectively. Life is a teacher. It's a great teacher. It's the best teacher. It's really the only teacher that there is. So I would say to you, yes. One of the things I did with my children when they were young is I always played African-centered philosophers, scientists, researchers, whatever I could find on YouTube in the morning time when they wake up, I just play it. I always had some Amos Wilson, some John Henrik Clarke, some Ivan Van Sertima playing in the background, because I knew that their minds, you cannot unsee or unhear anything. Every thought has weight, shape, color, form, and essence, period. Unfortunately, we've gotten away from understanding how people learn. People don't learn by force. If I give you a book to read right now and you don't want to read it, are you going to read it? No, you're not going to read it. Same thing with your child. When your child, let me tell you how my sons learn how to read. Video games. They wanted to play the game. They couldn't understand the words. Mom, what's this word? I don't know that word. You got to figure that word out. I can help you with some phonetics. So I started taking the words and putting them all around the house on cards. That's how they learned how to read. And then I gave them the basic phonetics. What is phonetics? A, B, B, C, K. You want to learn the word, you put the A, B, K together, you learn how to read the word. We have to understand, like me and Jessica were talking about, all Blackness right now is reactionary to white supremacy. What are your roots? If your children were in an African village right now, how would they learn? They would learn by the rhythm. What is the rhythm of your household? If you want to change the way your children learn, change the rhythm of your household. What does it mean when you wake up in the morning? What does it mean when it's lunchtime? What do these things mean? How do they have connotation in your everyday life? That's how you teach children. Children learn how to act like their parents by going with their parents. Children's impetus for learning is wanting to become an adult, wanting to do the things that adults do. So if you want to teach a child something, you teach them by doing it and not shying them away. So like you said, you don't need to read childlike material to your children for them to learn how to read. You need to just read to them. Whatever it is, whether it's a Thomas the Train book or whether it is the latest journal put out by the American Journal of Medicine, they will learn because they'll hear it. The more they hear it, the more they can speak English. If your child can speak English, they can read English. It's just a matter of them my kids know about things like homonyms and homophones, even though I've never taught them these things. They'll come to me and say, oh, mom, why come there and there is the same? And I'll say, explain it to me. I won't tell them. I'll say, explain it to me. What do you mean? Well, some people say there over there, and some people say like, this is theirs. Like, what is that? And then I'll explain it to them. And guess how many times I have to explain it to them? Once. Why? Because the impetus to learn was not on me. It was on them. They wanted to learn it. So guess what's next? They learn it. This is not, white people have made us think that kids need to sit in classrooms. And I know Lauren knows, because that little boy that came to the learning co-op, whew, I was like, please don't put that baby in school, because that baby's on fire. But we think that we have to put our kids in these classrooms and get a chalkboard. It's not true. And if you want to buy into it, go ahead. You're going to make your life a lot harder, but it's not true. My son started reading books because I just set books out on the table. And my youngest son still ain't going to pick up no book. He hates books. He'll tell anybody I don't like to read. But guess what he liked to do? Play them damn video games. So he's going to learn to read because he wants to do. My youngest son is my most strong-willed of all my children. So he's the one that's constantly asking questions. He's the one that's constantly bucking me. So he's going to learn because he doesn't want to ask anybody else. He wants to know. So we think that our children, for some reason, some reason, because of white supremacy, because of whiteness, because of white people normalizing shit that they shouldn't have been normalizing in the first place, because realistically, y'all are the youngest culture on the planet, which means y'all have a lot to learn.
Very well said.
This is not, what you think is real is not real. I will use the words of John Henrik Clarke, until you understand white supremacy, everything you think you understand will only confuse you. It will only confuse you, because you've allowed a people who are the children of the earth to teach you how to teach your kids. You've allowed the inmates to run the asylum, and it ain't real. We got to wake up. We keep snapping our fingers, but we won't wake up. This is not real. This is the Matrix. You have to wake up to your original self.
Muffy, so let me ask you then.
Fran, I think someone had a question.
Crystal
had her hand raised. Crystal, I don't know. But first, Ebony, I want to uplift you for asking that question, because I know
Absolutely.
as somebody who is, I feel like our children are around the same age, and it is hard to navigate this moment. And so I just want to take a moment to uplift you for being wise enough to think already about how you are starting to lay a foundation to welcome education into your child's home and environment. And thank you for being vulnerable enough in this space to ask that question. So thank you for that.
And thank you, Jessica. Because I'm not soft. I tend to be very I apologize.
Me and Muffy, we're over here. We're a team.
Okay.
And it's very true, because it goes back to the insecurity, because just what you said, as far as this reality isn't real, this timeline, all of this, I 100% agree, and I'm learning. I'm 24 years old, so there's a lot more for me to learn. But it's that last bit of like, that also goes for the education. Like I felt pressure of, I had the little alphabets on the wall, which is nothing wrong with that. But again, I don't have to force something, allow it to be, and just do, like you said. So that's very, I take that to the heart.
And Ebony, you will be surprised when your child is ready for structured learning. He will come to you, especially you got girls. That girl, she's going to be so far beyond. And when she's ready for structured learning, she will let you know she wants more structured learning. And the thing is, some kids are here for structured learning, and some kids need independence in their learning. It's dependent upon the child. It's not dependent upon the system. So really what your job is to pay attention to your child. And as you do that, and you're younger than me thinking about these things, so you're going to be 10 times better than I am. And that's the beauty of this moment, is that we have mothers and fathers who are in their 20s who are asking these questions. It took me until I was 32 to start asking these questions. So, you know, just be confident in yourself, and whatever your intuition says, if your intuition says to you, and then you can go on my website, brownmamas.com, there is a whole list of curriculums and whatnot for African-centered curriculums, and all of that is on there. So if you're looking for, you know, stuff that you can start to use, stuff you can start to play for her, because there's nothing wrong with that. But what I want you to get out of is, I want you to get out of this feeling that you're doing something wrong, sis, because you're not. You're not doing nothing wrong. You are doing what a mother is supposed to do. You are nurturing, you are caring, you are protecting, you're being the mother bear. You're doing your job. Don't let this world trick you into thinking your child is supposed to be 5 years old and they're supposed to be a Rhodes Scholar. Because a Rhodes Scholar ain't nobody but somebody that went over to Africa and stole a whole bunch of shit and raped and pillaged anyway. So let's be mindful of what we are following when we are following these American education trends. No, when somebody says something to you, when somebody tells you you're supposed to do something, look it up first. Figure out what was the impetus for that thing. When somebody tells you your child should know how to read by the time they're 5, who said that? My child didn't read till he was 8, and he's an awesome reader now. Who told you that? Why is that the truth? Because a lot of times this stuff is not based on reality. It's based on some figment, some imaginative thing that somebody else dreamed up under the guise of a threatening imperialistic system that is not real.
Hey, Muffy, I have a question kind of going off of what you've been talking about.
I'm so sorry. I don't want to ignore Crystal, who raised her hand before. I'm sorry to cut you off, Amy, but Crystal, I want to uplift you. If you had a question still, you can ask it.
Hi, Crystal.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Hi, my name is Crystal, and I just wanted to add on to what Ebony was asking about as far as like what kind of material can she kind of present to her daughter. So I'm a mom of 3 boys, 1.5, 5, and 3. And to be honest, I started with my 5-year-old when he was maybe 2, around the same age that Ebony actually started. And I was in the same boat she was in. I didn't have the mindset of I wanted to homeschool when I first started. But I read a book, and it was pretty much saying everything that she said right now. She was saying, like, we have to take control of our own children. We can't allow someone else to teach our kids. And my husband's like, you're going to be at home, so you might as well think of a plan. So that's what started me on the journey of homeschooling. And what I noticed from my 5-year-old and my 2-year, well, he's 3 now, but my 2.5-year-old is, I was lost in the beginning. So what I thought would be helpful was to give him games at that time, because I stressed myself out with my 5-year-old when I first started off. So I give him like small games, and this was something that I created. And I know in the beginning, Ebony, you said you was an artist yourself. So I was thinking, what about you creating something? So just hearing something like as far as bingo ABC, and it's something small, but in the long run, it makes a really, really big impression on your child. So my 3-year-old, when I started with him, around the same age I started, my 5-year-old was around 2. I was personally frustrated, but I had to stop and remind myself where my 5-year-old was when he was this age. And with you having your first baby girl, you're like, you're stressing yourself out. I can only imagine, because that's how it was with my 5-year-old son. But as time went on, he caught on and he did amazing things. And now my 3-year-old, when I started him at 2-year-old, I was like, well, I have to remember where I was with my 5-year-old. And right now he's 3 and he's doing amazing, been able to identify letters and numbers. But the thing is that we have to be patient. Just know that it's going to come. The same thing that she was saying, but just don't stress yourself out. That's my biggest advice that I just want to share with you. Just don't stress yourself out. Know that when she gets there, you'll be impressed, and she's going to keep moving and continue to impress you. But that's all I want to share. It's just maybe creating something.
Thank you,
Thank
Crystal.
you.
I really
Thank
appreciate
you,
that.
Crystal.
Tara, you're kind of quiet over there. I wonder if you have any perspective about how your kids are approaching education, what kind of opportunities you might have created for them at an early age. Let me unmute you, Tara.
I was really looking forward to hearing how Muffy approaches education, because I know when we talked earlier, I took in a lot of her perspective. And I feel like I view education now very casually because we're doing homeschool, you know, it's a pandemic. My 10-year-old tends to stress about like late assignments and being present and things like that. And I'm just kind of like, you're in our home. Like, nobody's going to check you in my house. Like, if you're missing assignments, that's acceptable because we're in a pandemic. Like, I'll have days with her where I'm like, hey, leave class early. Like, let's go for a walk. Let's get ice cream, you know, things like that. And I don't want to feel any guilt around that because I feel like now more than ever, it's very acceptable. My 5-year-old misses class a lot, but that's because she transferred from private school back to Pittsburgh Public. So she's doing pre-K through the Children's Museum, which is a great program, but it's a program that functions much better in person. And my 5-year-old is much more advanced than the other kids and has done her entire workbook. So she wants to sleep in, you know, I'm not pressed. If there's an assignment they want her to do, I'll put her on the call to like show her little assignment. And it's a lot different than the views I used to have as far as education. Like, by nature, my 10-year-old has always been like super attentive. Like, she's made high honor roll very consistently until now, since COVID hit. My 5-year-old was at Ellis and I had a lot of difficulty. And Muffy, as far as what you were saying about insecurity, like that resonated so deeply with me because I was incredibly insecure about her going to private school. She's going to Ellis, and you know, Ellis was a great school. She loved Ellis. I have a lot of guilt because she wants to go back to Ellis, and unfortunately, like, it wasn't affordable. And especially, you know, not now with everything being so uncertain. So we de-enrolled her, and she did gain a lot as far as confidence and, you know, social interactions. But I had a difficult time because I'm not like those Ellis moms. Even, you know, the other Black mothers that went to Ellis, they all have really nice jobs. They all present a lot differently than I do. Like when Neon started Ellis, I was working like at a sneaker boutique. You know, I don't have a career. I'm not established. Like, I'm still on food stamps, you know? So there was my insecurity because of that. And there was the insecurity of just like I already have difficulty with my girls because my oldest has a white father and is white presenting, and my youngest has a Black father and, you know, is very brown. So like, you have to empower them in different ways. Like, I have to teach my oldest about privilege. I have to teach her about, you know, being an advocate for her younger sister. And my youngest, I have to, you know, tell her all the time how beautiful her hair is, how beautiful her skin is, because nobody else is going to tell her that. And I worried so much about her at Ellis, like wanting to kind of assimilate. And I used to tell my partner, like, what if she wants to, you know, look white? What if she wants straight hair? Like, I don't want that for her. And I got good advice from her grandmother as far as like, you know, she's going to take in the most at home. So at home, if you're reinforcing these things, then she's not going to go to school and want to present any differently. But it was also like being a part of the Parents of Students of Color group. That was difficult for me because I think people of color, it's a dismissive term. Like, my presence in that group was to advocate for my Black daughter. Like, there's no person of color like my daughter's Black. I had conflict with other parents because they would be advocating on behalf of their kids and throwing around this terminology that I was uncomfortable with. And then like nobody else would agree. I had like an older guy who's like, well, I study philosophy, so I understand words. And I want to understand like what your issue is with person of color. And I'm like, it's very simple. Like, my child's not a person of color. My child is Black. I don't want like people of color in leadership roles. I want Black people in leadership roles within this institution. So I don't have to be nervous around like how my child is being treated, how people are reacting to certain things. And like, the conflict made me remove myself from the parent group. And like, I know so much of it was rooted in like my insecurity based on myself and my own lived experiences, because like, When I moved to Pittsburgh, I started attending a white school, which was not the norm. Like, I grew up in Western New York, and there was a heavily Black and Hispanic population. So white people were the minority. So to come here and have that level of culture shock, like, I didn't want that for my daughter. Like, I had experiences where people were outright racist towards me, and that was just the norm. And like, I did not want that for her. And I'm not going to speak ill of Ellis, because like, I know they were doing the best that they can. And a lot of their structure isn't necessarily rooted in white supremacy, because they believe in, you know, a less structured education. And but at the root of it all, like, it's all white people that run the school. It's all white teachers. She did have a Black teacher who was lovely and is now like the director of diversity for that school, which is great. We really liked her. But it's like, is that it? Is that all we get? Like, it's always just like, here you go, you get a Black diversity and inclusion teacher, you know, be okay with that. And yeah, with that said, I had a rough experience with that. And since COVID and like adapting to homeschooling, again, I view education in a much more relaxed way, but I'm trying to learn how to like be more present for them, because I'm not so great at that. I'm a good like overseer, I'm a good like helper, but like, I don't know what I could be doing more. I know I've had talks more often with my 10-year-old, because she'll have questions that I feel like, I can give an example. She had a question on a worksheet yesterday, and it was like, oh, a supermarket moves into a neighborhood, and what does the neighborhood need? Like, something like that. And she's like, I don't understand this question. And I'm like, well, this question omits a lot, because the supermarket moved into the community who had to be displaced for that supermarket to come in. Is the supermarket affordable? Is it accessible to people with, you know, low socioeconomic circumstances? Like, there's so many other things. Like, it becomes so nuanced and multi-layered. And I was talking to her about it, and she's like, you're right, and like, I don't like this assignment. And similarly, like, they had questions about like nutrition, and I'm like, well, there's a lot of racism rooted in this whole idea of clean eating and nutrition. And it's like, accessibility is a factor. You know, they want you to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. Those things aren't necessarily filling, so you have to have a very particular budget in order to buy enough and consume enough to be filling. A lot of people can't afford to do that. And then it's like, you have a lot of one parent households where the primary caretaker has to work, and meals have to be quick, they have to be efficient. And like, my daughter gets it, and she can absorb these conversations. I'm like, okay, is this enough though? Like, is she going to keep all this with her? Like, am I just like throwing empty words at her that like she's going to remember in the moment and then forget about later? And like, I don't know. So I'm a bit all over the place.
So who are you seeking approval for, or from, or what is it that's making you wonder if it's enough? Do you feel like you're not giving enough, or do you feel like you want to give more? Because there's two different perspectives here. You're telling me, you're saying that you're doing all of these things for your daughter, but then you're questioning yourself and saying, am I doing enough? To me, there's a disconnect in that, because you are already doing so much, explaining to your 10 or 5-year-old these complex socioeconomic issues that we have. So, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, we as mothers, we're constantly questioning ourselves, whether we're doing enough or whether we're good enough for our children. And what's it going to take for us to stop questioning that, to finally be able to recognize ourselves and say, you know what, I'm doing great for my kids, but I just want to do more, instead of saying, am I doing enough? You know, the different framing of that. And I think it has a lot to do with the way capitalism is, the way that white supremacy is. There's always these things that are imposed on us. And I would have wanted to be in that. I would have wanted you to talk to my kids, you know, things like that. And I think that's great that you can have such deep, profound, and meaningful, relevant conversations with your 10-year-old. You're doing fantastic. And I don't, you know, it's just to see that somebody as powerful and as incredible as you still questioning. What does that say about us as women and as mothers? I don't know. I guess I'm putting that question out to everyone.
I think it says that we need help. And I think we have to recognize that we are asking, prior to American individualism and capitalism kind of taking over the world, and it still exists in many societies outside of America, we're asking one or two people to do a job that is normally done by a community. And
Mhm.
it's not enough. We have to be honest with ourselves and say, it's not enough to put the entire impetus for another person on one person or on two people. It's not enough. We need to get back to intergenerational, intercommunal living,
Mhm.
where a neighbor comes to your house and fills in, because just have to understand the human condition in terms of what does it mean to be one human? What does it mean to be a singular human? And the reality is it doesn't mean very much, because you have all of these areas where you are strong, but then you have tons of areas where you are weak, and you are never going to get better in some of those areas. You will remain weak in those areas until the day you die. But that is why, indigenously, in our more antiquitous past, people raised children in groups. A child was born with a mother, a grandmother, a godmother, an auntie, and godmother, auntie, and grandmother were just as much mama as mama was. So I think we have to recognize the ways in which capitalism, individualism, imperialism have kind of wrecked that family structure that's really necessary and needed for children to thrive. And as individuals, we have to really stop thinking that we can do it all, because we can't. So whereas Tara might be great at having conversations with her daughter about these bigger social movements, because maybe she's a person who sees she's a person who sees, things from an eagle's eye view. Maybe there could have been an auntie who's really good at the details, who's really good at making sure, you have a cut in your sandwich at lunchtime. I'm not good at that. I'm never going to be good at that. That's just not realistic for me. So I think we have to start building these villages and being realistic about what one person has to bring to the village. And especially, I feel like with the older generations, I feel like we are finally in a place where millennials in particular are asking for help. And a lot of times we're being told by the older generations to do it ourselves. And we're like, no, I'm being honest with you. I need help. I can't do this by myself. It feels impossible. And they're telling us, no, you need to figure out how to do it by yourself. But the reality is what we should be doing for our children is building those villages, and also making sure that they understand they can ask us for help, and that we will be there to help, because it's not realistic. And I think what Tara is feeling, what I can say I feel on a daily basis also, Tara, the same exact way that you feel, which I'm sure a lot of moms on here can say they feel that way, is normally what you would feel in a society that tells you only two people are supposed to live and spearhead a household. That's not real. That's why they had sister wives. Everybody wants to think about that from a sexual perspective, but nobody wants to think about it from a perspective of business and ethics and work. And why did 5 women live in a compound with 1 man? Because those 5 women were utilizing each other's collective consciousness, skill sets, abilities to raise all of the children up, so that it wasn't a situation where weeds or strangling out flowers, but where there are several people who can tend to the weeds, so everybody gets to be a beautiful flower. So I think we have to really go back and reimagine some of these things that, about monogamy, and the way in which we are raising our children is insane. It just doesn't make sense. But because America has created this, oh, this is what looks clean and white and pure, and this is what it is, and the fence and the 2 people, and they look happy, but ain't shit happy in their household. They look happy when they come out to take the picture. When you're looking at their household, nothing's really happy. So let's go back to Leave It to Beaver. And let's be honest about what Leave It to Beaver probably looked like inside the house when mom is home all day and she's bored and she's chain smoking cigarettes. Why? Like, why is that happening?
But
And
how do we begin to unlearn these things, and like how do we decolonize? Because even now, like I know, like as much as I'm against capitalism, I still function in a way that's capitalistic. You know, I like nice things because I grew up not having nice things. And now it's like, all right, I have a little bit of access. I can have like cool clothes and cool shoes. And I know I impart that on my kids in some capacity because, again, since I had so little, I always want them to have the newest gadgets. So it's like my daughter has iPads, she has a Switch, you know, we have all of that. And like, I know it's not healthy. And then it's also like, they'll ask me like, well, why do we have to go to school? And I'm like, because you need to go to college, you need to get a good job so you guys will be able to take care of each other. And I don't want to reinforce that capitalistic mindset, but I also don't want them to have to struggle. So like, what's the medium?
The medium is, my dad would always say this to me when I was younger, and I would always be like, that's not the answer. But the reality is, it's true. You have to negate. You can't, we want to find the easy answer because we're American, but the reality is it's not an easy answer. You have to negate, and you have to do it. This is the thing. You got to recognize that to be human means you are immortal. You will live on through your children. You will live on through generations. So you can only do a little bit at a time. You can't do it all at one time, y'all. So yeah, you're going to buy the Switch because the Switch is the difference between the badass kids outside that might get shot or sell drugs and the house bad kids, the kids who's just house bad. Like they just do bad stuff in the house, but they don't go outside and do no bad stuff. So you got to buy the Switch. You have to, like, you don't have a choice but to buy the Switch. But in those other areas where you know, like wasting food, like getting smart with the adults in the room, you got to start to go back to some of those old ways, but removing the shame, removing the I don't tell nobody what's going on in my house, removing the big mama syndrome, I'm not allowed to ask for help. So we have to start to negate. That's just the reality of it. That's the only way to get rid of capitalism and white supremacy is to negate, to learn how to live off of the fact that a capitalist society creates access everywhere because it is inherently greedy. So how do you live off the access? So maybe instead of going to Best Buy and getting that Switch brand new, you go on eBay and buy it. And you teach your kids how to go on eBay and buy it because that helps them to recognize they don't have to always be gratified at every moment. They can delay gratification in order to have a better output later. So it's really about negating in as many small ways as you can, but maintaining your lifestyle. Because lifestyle is important. If the kids struggle too much, guess what? They ain't gonna want to have nothing to do with nothing you did before. So it's small steps. We want to think because of because of being American, we want to think it's this big thing. It's not. Get a garden, start growing some food. Guess what happens 2 or 3 centuries from now? Somebody might want to be a farmer. That's a full negation. If I can grow my own food and chop my own cows, and that's a full negation. But you have to get there little by little by little. It's not going to happen overnight. So Tara, you're doing a great job in those small areas where you notice I could be a little bit closer to my indigenous ancestors if I just nicked a little bit off right here. That's how we get back. But we're not going to get back if we keep putting so much pressure on ourselves. Like, oh, I want to be mother of the forest by next year. Not going to happen. That's not real. I like Etsy. Etsy's going to get a certain percentage of my paycheck every time because I just like them. So it is what it is. I'm saying it is what it is. So we have to negate. And we can't ignore the need for institution building and structure because there is, like, we have to build institutions. And a big part of building institutions is building structure. But it's almost like that thing we have to destroy and rebuild. So it's like this constant transformation that we have to undergo. The difference between the capitalist transformation and the transformation back to being a little bit more holistically human is that the capitalist transformation is transformation toward excess, transformation toward more, transformation towards having, encompassing, collecting. We want to start to transform in the reverse way, a little bit at a time.
I don't know when I wrote some stuff down, but I wrote some stuff down in notes in preparation for this conversation. I think this is the time to share them. Muffy, I think that was a great segue. Liberation is both a dismantling project and a building project. We have to make our own tools if we are to bring the house down. Using the master's tools leads to a reproduction of the same, quote, mastery. Raising children with the hopes that their dreams will not reflect the death of ours. I don't know when I wrote that, but I was like, oh, this is,
that's deep, Jessica.
I don't know if they came together at once, but they were somewhere, and I was like, I gotta talk about this. Because I think this is it. You know, what is it? Audre Lorde, right? My Lord and Savior. The oppressed cannot be responsible for teaching the oppressor how to unoppressed people. This doesn't make sense. And we can't expect the oppressor to ever do that work. It's never gonna happen. The change that, Muffy, you're so eloquently defining will only happen if it's through us and with us. This is why earlier when I was like, I don't give a fuck what y'all think, when we were talking about white people and white accountability, is because I'm no longer, I am so rooted in creating our own spaces, doing stuff that is just for us. I am building Black spaces for Black people, for Black women, for Black mothers. Y'all can do that other funky stuff over here. And we can exist, you know, like we can coexist, but what I'm focused on is not your apology, because I'm gonna be waiting until the cows come home for you to say sorry for me. If I'm gonna wait for the check to come in the mail, it's never gonna come. I'm gonna be dead and gone. It's gonna be Max's grandkids, right, are gonna be still waiting for a check to arrive in her mailbox. I don't got time for that. I am seriously focused on what can I, Jessica, me, with the tools that I have and the knowledge and experience that I have, build with my own hands for my own people. That's why I love that metaphor you said about the garden, even if it's the smallest thing. You know, Sybil Shrine, which Tara is a part of, and Lauren on this call, this residency for Black moms in Pittsburgh. I was on a call with some, I can't remember who said it, but on one of our classes, it was about gardening. And one of the moms said, food is free. And that radicalized my whole shit. I was like, food is free. Food is free. Why do I have to, what? I go to the grocery store and I'm like, this is stupid. Swipe my card.
That's how I feel about foraging. You know, foraging is only illegal because it was a way to prevent Black and Indigenous populations from getting free food. Like, you can't just openly go and forage. You have to be very careful about it. And it's like, this grows on trees. I can't just take it, but it doesn't work that way.
But maybe if we grow our own trees, Tara, in our own communities as villages, with our mamas and our aunties and our grandmas and our sisters, then it does work that way, because we're the ones who make the rules. And it's not about paying for the oranges when the oranges fall over the fence line. It's about there's no fences.
Yep. And I think what we have to, well, we don't have to do this, but what we want to do in terms of collaboration, and I think what white folks have to understand is, it's not that we don't want to collaborate. We want to collaborate on an even playing field.
Equity.
We don't want you to give us anything, and we don't want you to take anything. We just want to come to the table with our own shit, so that when we come to the table, we can talk eye to eye. Because right now, when Black people are at white tables, it's not eye to eye. I can't talk to you eye to eye when you own everything and I'm taking your crumbs. That's not possible. I can't talk to you eye to eye. It doesn't exist. It's not real. And they get mad when we're like militant, because you want to have a conversation with me about real shit that affects my children and the people in my community in real ways, but I can't even bring anything to the table. This is not fair. It's not fair. It's not acceptable. And I'm the type of person that I'd rather not participate at all. If I can't come to the table evenly with you, I'd rather work on becoming even and equal, because at the end of the day, what white people have to realize is you're doing yourself a disservice. by not having me come to the table equally, because I am Earth.
Because
am
if
Earth.
Black women win, everybody wins. But
And we
not
don't-
until we start uplifting Black women will everybody win. That's this tension.
And you don't need any proof from that other than the fact that we haven't tried to kill y'all. Let's just keep it 100. That's the only proof you need. We stepped off those plantations and did not try to kill y'all. What did we want? Equality, which means what? Not only were we looking out for ourselves, but we were looking out for you. Because we could have stepped off those plantations and murdered everybody. It's all we've ever asked for.
I think about the riots that just happened, the terrorism that just happened at the Capitol. That imagery of seeing that Black cop so respectfully move back, treat people, like this, you got that gun on you. This is your chance. This is your chance. But so respectfully, like made space, like almost like accept it. I can't even imagine all the things that were going through his mind in that moment. But like, if it was reversed, we know what would have happened, without a doubt. Yes, completely, with his life in danger. Mm-hmm. And that was the choice. And that's how you move through with peace and grace. And it is not reciprocal. That is never exchanged.
And I do want to point out that Movement Capoeira had said that he or she said, oh, we have a couple, he, she, or they said, oh, we have a couple of times, and we have. But I think it is very telling of the Black persona, of the Black essence and way of being, that we are primarily peaceful people. We want peace for everyone. But we have many times. There have been many birth of the nations on America's soil. So I think we have to, recognize that. But also, I don't even want to say what white folks owe us at this point, but just know that to uplift us, to simply not help us, but not hinder, is going to help the entire human experience, because that is what we seek. We are a people of earth. We are a people of element. We are an original people. All we need to do is grow in order for everything else to grow beautifully around us. And so I think we have to, for Black folks, is really just about us getting back to our roots and really, honestly, no longer being in participation. And I think the less we participate in a society that is systemically and consistently trying to root us out, the further we will get in our objective to be able to sit at a table with the other cultures of the world, with the other peoples of the world, and actually be even. But I think that is going to take a lot of discomfort on our part, because it took a lot of discomfort for us to get in the position that we are in right now. So we have to expect an equal or greater amount of discomfort to get back to the place where we can have an even playing field. Because I always like to bring these conversations, absolutely, discomfort, the word of the year. Yeah, you ain't never lied. I think we have to recognize that it's not like that never existed before. And I think Ebony had left, but that was what I was trying to say in terms of recognizing there's nothing wrong with you, recognizing that we've done this before. It's really just about remembrance, but it's difficult. Hey, Ebony. Oh, you changed your name. Okay, cool. It's really about remembrance, but you can't, it's almost like when you watch those movies and the character has amnesia, but it takes for him to be in a familiar setting to remember. And we haven't gotten back to that familiar setting. One of the things that I do every year that I know my ancestors used to do was make the ascension. So the ascension is when the weather gets at its height, you go outside and you put your feet on the ground and it's sun above, sun in the middle, sun below, and you make the ascension. And we have to get back to doing these practices. We have to stop being afraid to be Black, to be us, to be African. And when we get to that point, we will remember who we are. And then when we remember who we are, there will be no such thing as needing to come to the table in equality, because we'll just take our seat. It's just a matter of taking back then what is yours. So I think we have to, the impetus for the work, honestly, if I'm being honest from my perspective, is not on white folks. They have their own work to do within their own communities, which is evidenced by what just happened, last week. That's their work to do, because that community is just all kinds of jacked up. We got our own work to do, because reality is that we've been living under white folks for a very long time. So we brought our own dysfunction to the table. Let's be very real on that. Black people played a major role in our own demise. And then we also coupled on their dysfunction. And so now we just have a big ass ball of dysfunction that we have to deal with. But we have to, in many ways, a lot of people say, well, do you believe in segregation? And I say, yes, for a time. Segregation is sometimes necessary. It's no different than if a person is trying to heal, like when a person goes to rehab. They don't go to rehab, with people who are clean. They go to rehab with other addicts. Same attracts same, like attracts like. And then through those common experiences, through the sharing of the dysfunction, we're able to almost be a mirror for each other, see the problems, and then be able to fix them. And it's the same thing with what needs to happen with white folks. They need to go into their own space and tear up their own shit so that they can start to see the dysfunction that exists in their own community and recognize it's tearing them down from the bottom up. And Black people need to do the same thing. Every culture needs to do it at some point. And then you have a base to work from, because you've kind of created, all right, now we see the mirror, now we see what we need to fix, and we have a base to work from. Right now, white people and Black people, in all of our dysfunction, we have no basis. We have no basis. And so we're just basically this ball of dysfunction rolling down a hill, getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it just implodes. And the worst thing about the implosion is that when it implodes, we're just left with a whole bunch of scattered ass pieces. And there's nobody with a mind for how to fix it.
Muffy, to your point about segregation and integration, I had this, I know I'm radical and I know I'm militant. I know it. And I had this like a epiphany, which isn't news, but when integration happened, it was such a deterioration of Black communities and Black cultures. Because when we were segregated, we had Black doctors, we had Black banks, we had, our own ecosystem that we could function in and move freely. And then integration happens, and for whatever reason, you think that the ice is colder with the white doctors, or that you'll get better care there. And so then we see a complete loss of culture, of community, of support within our own neighborhoods, of Black people, which ultimately, segregation, integration happened over 50 years ago now, but there's so much residual there. That's why there's so few, like I'm trying to find a Black therapist. You know how hard it was for me to go on, I'm talking to my insurance and I'm like, can you tell me if there's a Black one? They're like, we're not allowed to disclose that information. I'm like, I'm Googling people, trying to image search, because it's such a priority for me to feel like, I think it was Ebony or Sam or somebody's point earlier about cultural competency. If I'm having a discussion about my mental health, it's important for me to have that discussion with another Black woman. And I have to do so much extra to be able to identify if the person that I'll be speaking to as a professional actually identifies in this way. And that is, I think, rooted from the early times of integration, truly. And it is a disservice to our community.
And I think we have to, if we talk about discomfort, we have to talk about comfort also. And I think that, nobody wants to admit that if I'm a white woman and I have a baby, it's going to make me feel good to have another white woman who has similar experiences by my side, because she understands me, she gets me, she understands my life experience. It's like that movie, The Avatar, with the blue people. I can't remember what their little saying was, but they would say when they greeted each other, I see you. Like, you need to see people, and it's not enough to just see them on the top. You have to be able to see, like, I can meet a Black woman, find out how many kids she has, find out where she works at, and I kind of instinctively know what her household looks like when she gets home. Because at some point in my life, I was at that point. So I understand some of the things she's experiencing, because I understand her. I understand I don't just see her socioeconomic background as numbers, but I see it as a lifestyle, a way of being, a way of understanding life, a perspective, a worldview. So there's just insight that I have. And I think it has less to do with color and it has more to do with culture. So I could have a white woman who I grew up in the same neighborhood with and have had the same experiences, and I would feel more comfortable having her around than I would a Black woman who grew up 2 neighborhoods down, has completely different cultural experiences than I have. So I think we have to stop making it about race and make it about culture, but we also have to understand that this is America. Even though we say segregation is over, that is not true. We still live in an extremely segregated country. So to say I have the same culture is almost like saying I have the same race. Now, if it were different, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because there would be no such thing as really Black motherhood. There would be American motherhood, and American motherhood at different levels. But just the fact that we have something called Black motherhood, just the fact that up until I would say a decade ago, you hardly even seen Black moms on TV, unless we're talking about Claire Huxtable. You only seen white moms on TV. So there is a certain, we have to understand that this is not about hate. It is not about preference. It is simply about wanting to feel comfortable in your life. It is simply about wanting to have people around you that you know understand your perspective. It's simply about, when you go to that first business meeting, not wanting to be the only person in the room and having everybody stare at you when you walk in.
Thank you, Muffy. Wow, this was an incredible conversation, and we are at 6 o'clock. Can you believe it? And I really want to continue this conversation. And maybe we'll have a panel number 3. What do you guys think about that, Muffy, Tara, and Jessica?
Squeeze one in if we manage to get the exhibition extended.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I'm gonna work on this week. And I just wanted to thank everyone. And Muffy, the question I had earlier that was kind of that I think you kind of answered, which was, so because you had initially said at the very beginning of the panel that you made this choice away from the institutions of the school to transform the home, or take the rhythms, and you talked about the rhythms of the home and using that as harnessing that for teaching and learning and pedagogy. And so my question was going to be, what is our schools, just the structure themselves, they're white supremacist structures. So is there any way to shift them, or is it about recentering to another site, whether that is the home? And I think, meaning, like, can we change the school system as it is? Is that possible? Or is it about a total reimagining? But I think when you start talking about community and intergenerationality and intercommunity care, like that, and how you said, like, just doing negating the little things one at a time, like that was to me, that kind of answered that question, which was that it's not about just taking down an institution, starting a new one. It's about this slow, total cultural shift and viewpoint. And so I really, really appreciated that. And then also, I know we're at the end, but I did want to throw a question out there to the artists, because Tara and Jessica, I have to say, are just amazing, accomplished artists and curators. And thinking about the ways in which art operates in this space, or could operate, is just, and I'll just, maybe that's a rhetorical question to ponder, because we're at our time limit. But anyway, so those are the ideas that I was thinking about as you were talking, and especially, you know, the dysfunction of whiteness, of white culture, that is the clearly the biggest threat to our entire, you know, safety and ability to be a functional society right now. And so, you know, that is clearly something that needs to be addressed. And part of that is, you know, the default of whiteness. So whiteness doesn't get talked about in white communities because there's never an acknowledgement that we are something, that white people are something that is different.
Well, whiteness is invisible until it's interrupted.
Right. Absolutely. So anyway, sorry to throw that all right at the end when, as Fran was like, it's the end of the panel. But I just wanted to put those comments in, and I just want to just thank all of you and all the participants for this amazing panel.
Thank you, Amy. And I, you know, this is not a conversation I want to end, and I think this is a conversation that needs to continue. So we'll try to just throwing this out there to all our participants. Just keep an eye out on anthropologyofmother.com, our Instagram page, and our Facebook page, and the Carlow University Art Gallery Facebook and Instagram page. And we'll do this again. There's important conversation here that needs to be continued. And I really appreciate, again, Muffy, Jessica, Tara, for joining us on a Friday afternoon / evening. Again, Anthropology will be Anthropology of Motherhood is planning to be extended. It was supposed to close January 29th, but I think we'll be able to get some in-person visits there if anyone's interested.
Yes, I had a surprise in-person visit during the meeting, and it's actually someone. She's the chair of the art department at Seton Hill, and she mentioned that she knew Tara, and there was a trustee member. So it was a surprise, but I'm so glad they got to come in and see it regardless. So definitely working. I'll have an update next week about extending the show. So thank you, everyone.
I just want to say one more thing. If you're around or in Pittsburgh this coming week on January 22nd, Tara Fay has an exhibition that will be opening at Brew House called Roots Run Deep. So you can register online to get an advance ticket. I highly recommend you go see the show. Tara is brilliant and has been working on this exhibition for quite some time. And I think it's going to be a great show. I know it's going to be a great show. So make sure to register.
Brianna is one of our featured artists. We're so excited.
Tara, do you have
the link? Again, and when?
Do you have the link to register for?
You should follow Tara on Instagram.
Yeah, I'm gonna swap it out. I had the link for this in my bio, so I'm gonna put the Brew House link in my bio, and everybody can come and see all the work.
Okay, I love y'all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Night, y'all.
All right, Sarah. All right, cool. We're good. I think that went really well.
Yeah, that was